The other night, Tanny made spag bowl for dinner. Unfortunately, the sauce caught on the bottom of the pan and burnt a bit. He then asked me to fix it. Let's see what we can do. Welcome to Mend It Monday, where we fix things that normally get thrown away. Let's get started. One of the biggest fights we'll have on our hands with fixing a burnt tomato-based sauce is getting the flavour back into it and masking the burnt smoked flavour. And by masking it, I mean working with it, turning it into an umami base and not an astringent burnt cigarette flavour. One of the best ways I've found to do that is to roast off some Mediterranean style vegetables. So here I've already opened up and added to our roasting tin 5 packets of cherry tomatoes, and we're also going to add a courgette or zucchini, if you will. You want the pieces to all be about the same sort of size as the cherry tomatoes, so it all cooks at the same time. And we want to be cooking this low and slow. Does it matter what shape you cut your courgette into, or zucchini, whatever you want to call it? No, it doesn't. I'm just being a bit extra. I just find it easier to cut this way and a bit quicker than trying to cut it in half again and chopping it into chunks, and I'm just rather get on with it. I'm also adding 1 bell pepper to this. Now the reason for that is we don't want to overload it with that pepper flavour. We want this to be a really balanced, beautiful sauce. Capsicum or sweet bell peppers can be very overpowering, and we want them to add their sweetness without taking over the whole thing. So again, we're just chopping this into, dice about the size of a cherry tomato. So quite a large dice. Thing is, this will cook very, very quickly. The peppers will, and we don't want them charring, not hugely. I added half a celery to this. It's just very, very easy. Adds a little bit of sweetness without having too much of its own flavour. Onions are one of our staples and can fix pretty much anything at all when it comes to food. White ones are really good raw and perfect for salads. These ones, the brown ones, are better for a job like this where you're going to roast them outside of their skins and you want that caramelization and added flavour without the astringency. So I always peel my onions first when I'm using more than one, and we'll get the peels done first, cut them in half, and then chop them up and throw them in the pan. It just makes life that much easier. So while I'm peeling these onions, or these last 3 onions, let's talk about, can I fix every burnt sauce? And the answer to that is no. But this one, it was only caught a wee bit in the middle of the pot and a little on the side. If it had been there for another 5 minutes, then probably I wouldn't be able to fix this. But thankfully, it wasn't caught for that long. When we make things like spaghetti bolognese and, that kind of sauce, we try and make enough for 3 or 4 meals because that's what we do. It's just easier to cook one meal once and then make other meals out of it for us. So we want to be able to save this sauce. Could I have thrown it away and not bothered about it and just start again? Yeah, sure. But that would have added to the millions of tons of food waste that is unnecessary in this country. And honestly, it would have cost us a lot more money to do it that way. It's a lot of money to put these kinds of dishes together, and for us to be able to eat, or our household to be able to eat for a week or so, or 3 or 4 days, that's a lot of money and a lot of food to get rid of. Now, while I have your undivided attention, did you know that 81.3% of you watching my channel are not subscribed? How about you hit that subscribe button? It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You know, everywhere else they call it a follow button. Here they say subscribe. Sounds like it's going to cost you something, right? Yeah, no, it costs you nothing. It really helps the channel. Also, can I ask a favour? Can you please hit that like button, the thumbs up? You know, if you're watching on TV, you just use the arrow keys and it will take you to it. You can actually do it if you're watching on TV, which apparently 34.7% of you do. Okay, so now all our veg are in the roasting tin. We want to add some extra bouncy flavour to it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to add in my homemade confit garlic, and of course some fresh basil, which we're just going to very roughly throw on top at this point. Can you use dried for this? Yes, if you have to. I would suggest not, and the reason being is we are trying to create layers of flavouring. Dried herbs are more likely to catch and become burnt, whereas if you're creating your own fresh herbs, etc., or fresher flavours, that's going to give it an extra developed flavour which isn't going to burn so hard. Now, I actually used 5 cloves of confit garlic in this. Yeah, I know that sounds really weird because Tanny has an allergy to garlic, but he has an allergy to allium gas, which are the gases that are formed in the air from the smell of the garlic as it's cooking. He's not here while I do this, and once it's in the sauce and it's all mixed together, he'll be fine. Now, I'm using this confit garlic because A, I have it and I made it. I actually made it last year. That's, you know, it's been there for a while now, so it kind of, this is a great project to use something like this when you've done an experimental, you know, preserving job. And I don't have any fresh garlic at home right now. Now, I also used the oil from that confit garlic to coat a lot of this veg. Now, you want to mix it all together really, really well. Make sure that that oil has covered as much of those veg as possible. And we're going to pop them into the oven now on 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 Fahrenheit. Now, it's also gas mark 4. I used gas mark 5, but our oven is old, chunky, and losing, you know, the will to live. Now, we did that for about 3 hours, and every hour we turned it. It's really, really important to turn the veg, otherwise it does go incredibly black, and you don't want it to go incredibly black. Yes, those tomatoes look very, very black and burnt, but they're not as black and burnt as you think, and that is a different kind of burnt. That is a caramelized sugar burn and not a catch on the bottom of the tin burned. Caramelized, we chefs call it. Caramelized, not burnt. So now we've added all our roasted veg into the pot, we're now going to add the charred sauce. So we want to save as much as possible, but what we don't want to do is to drop any of the actual burnt bits in there, because that will only make the sauce deeper burnt flavour and will take away all the work that we've just done with those roast veg. So just be really careful, but get as much out as you possibly can. And once you have, we're going to mix those together really thoroughly. And now we've brought these two together and mixed them together thoroughly, it's time for the next layer of flavour. One way that I've found adds some serious depth of flavour to sauces like this is by adding other meats, cooked meats. So in this example I have a smoked sausage and I have some leftover slices of ham that we had in the fridge. Now, depending on whether you're going to be using a food processor, a blender or a stick immersion blender, will depend on how big your pieces of meat are going to be. Now I'm cutting mine into little quarters in slices because I'm going to be using the stick blender later. Obviously it's up to you what you put in your sauce. I've just used what we had and this makes sense to me. You've got the smoky sausage, which is going to add another depth of smokiness but detract and lessen the burnt smokiness. So you've got an actual smoky flavour without it being the burnt smoky flavour. So it accents it and complements it and lessens it all at the same time. Now you can use bacon for this, you can use salami for this, you can use any kind of cooked meats for this process, or you know, deli meats, air dried meats, whatever. You can use all of those for this. It just depends on what your preference of flavour is. When I make a lasagna from scratch, I actually use 10 different types of meat in my sauce. So this is nothing for me to do this. Yeah, I really have to make a video of that one day. And of course, like all additions, you need to stir between each one, make sure it's all through thoroughly. Now we need to add the liquid. Now we don't want to add too much liquid because we don't want it to be too watery, but we do want enough that this thick paste is going to warm through properly, blend properly and become a really unctuous, yummy sauce. So for this I'm adding 2 little boxes of passata, which are about 500 mils each, which is, I don't know the equivalent, let me have a look. Hold please. That's a metric pint. Yeah, that's a metric pint. It's not a proper pint. Proper pint is 600 ml, but a metric pint is 500 ml. So yeah, 2 of those and you're good to go. As you can see, it's actually kind of, you know, being able to lessen the thickiness to make it easier to blend. Now I'm just going to use my immersion blender for this. That's all that's necessary, and since it needs to be, you know, warmed through for a good 10 minutes afterwards, you don't have to. I choose to, because that's just me. Now once this is done, I will be turning ours into lasagna because that is what Tanny requested. Now I don't like blending this until it's puree. I prefer to keep a little bit of texture, sort of the mince kind of texture to the sauce, so that we have some kind of base for it. So once you got your sauce ready, you want to get your bits and pieces together to make your lasagna. Now I always put a little bit of the sauce underneath the first layer of pasta. Why? so that the pasta doesn't stick to the bottom of the dish, because it will. It likes doing that. So I only put a little bit in. I try and make sure that there's no lumps. Obviously that didn't work very well, but you know, it is what it is. Next will be our first layer of lasagna sheets. Now these are just shop bought ones. I haven't gone out of my way for this at all. They're just ones that we keep in the cupboard for emergencies, like emergency lasagna emergencies. That's what we keep them for, lasagna emergencies. And then another layer of our yummy sauce, because can I tell you right now, you would never know. You would never know at this point that there had ever been a problem with that sauce. Now I used about 3-4 spoons for this layer. I don't like them too thick, but I don't like them too thin either. You want to be generous, but you know, you want to make sure that you've got enough. So my dish decides that it's going to get bigger as we go up. So, you know, we have to deal with that. But we're also going to put in another layer of lasagna. Now I know some people put, see, look, it's a gap. I know some people put in cheese on top, but you know, I choose not to. I don't find that anything that I need to do. And you know, although Tanny and I have put white sauce on a layer on top of the middle layer before, it's just not been right for either of us. So as you saw, I split a sheet and popped it in the gap. Now we've got our next layer of sauce. We're going to make this one a little bit thicker because it's kind of the top layer. Just make sure that it's all, you know, as even as it can be. And we're going to put in our last layer of lasagna sheets. Here we go. Now on top of that, we are going to add our white sauce. Now again, these are jars that we have in the cupboard for lasagna emergencies. For when I do make my own lasagna, I make around 8 litres of sauce. Yeah, I do, which is about 2 gallons of sauce, for those who talk in old money. So yeah, but just make sure that you've got plenty. You want to be fairly generous with this because it will soak into the lasagna sheets quite heavily, and it won't leave you a lot of white sauciness on top. But yeah, and also just even it out. Just make sure it's nice and even. If I can see the slightest hint of the pasta underneath, I think it's too thin personally, but that's just me. For the very last layer, we're going to add some cheese that I grated myself on top. Now this isn't cheddar, this is red Leicester. It's our preference. Neither of us like mozzarella. It's just, unless it's made by us, it's not something that either of us are willing to eat. So we prefer to have something with a bit more depth of flavour when it comes to our cheese, and red Leicester has that. It's kind of like a vintage cheddar, or what they call in Australia a Cracker Barrel cheddar, but the colour comes from using tomato powder. So you've got that little bit of tomato hint in the back, which a lot of people don't recognise, but it is exactly what it is. So this is now going to go into the oven at 180 degrees Celsius, which is 350 Fahrenheit. Gas mark 4. Place it on a baking tray before you do. It's going to make life easier for you pulling it in and out of the oven. And we have it there until it's either golden brown or, you know, it's been in there 45 minutes to an hour. Next, we're going to make some for the freezer. Now, because I expanded the sauce to fix it, we now have a lot of sauce. We have a lot of sauce, okay? So same principle with the 9x9 foils. We're just going to layer it up. Make sure to put that little layer of sauce on the bottom underneath the first layer of lasagna sheets. Same reason, we don't want it sticking to the bottom, because if it sticks to the bottom it won't be cooked properly, and if you put the sauce underneath it, it will glide out on your slicer. Now let's have a look at pricing. So a lot of the ingredients that I used to fix this we already had. The 5 packets of cherry tomatoes I had to go and get, and they were 80p a pack. So 8 fives, £4. It's £4 for the cherry tomatoes. You can get them on offer if you grow them yourself, whatever, however you want to use them, it's up to you, you know. So we had those. Everything else is pretty much part of our shopping. I tend to have a smoked sausage floating around in the freezer most of the time for emergencies like this, so I don't count it as in the cost because it's normal purchasing for us. And the veg itself, apart from the tomatoes, we already had, so no big deal there. I tend to have a lot of these kinds of veg and things in our thing. I wouldn't worry about it too much, but to be honest, use whatever veg you have, and as long as you dice it to about the size of the cherry tomatoes, you can use carrots, you can use parsnips, you can use whatever you've got, but as long as you're turning it every hour, cooking it low and slow, making sure that it is turned so it doesn't do that, you're going to come out with a very similar outcome, and that's awesome. So for the cost of a few bags of cherry tomatoes and some wonky veg from our fridge that I wouldn't have been able to use this week unless I'd had to do this, or a few jars of something that I've had at the back of the cupboard for ages, because let's be honest, I don't buy this kind of stuff unless it's an offer. It's got to be a really good offer as well for me to buy it. I'm not going to just go 2 for 1. It's not going to happen. So, you know, putting all of those things into perspective, not only has this helped me sort of rotate stock in my pantry, it's helped me use veg that I probably would have ended up having to put on the compost or throw away. And it's created not only dinner for tonight, not only dinner for tomorrow, but also 2 more meals, at least 2 more meals. I figure that's a win. And it didn't cost as much. To be able to do this from scratch, if I'd thrown away the sauce, would have cost us a lot more than just using the stuff that we had to fix it. Now, every Monday we are going to start doing Mend It Monday. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean food. It could be mending clothing, it could be mending a broken cup, it could be mending anything. Okay, if you have ideas that you would like help with, if you have issues with mending things, broken things, whatever, pop it in a comment below or send me an email, and I will see what I can do about making a video to help you mend the thing that you need to mend. I will also be trying to alternate between food and DIY mending over the few weeks as things come up, or anywho, just to reiterate the fact that this isn't generally about food, or just about food. It is about fixing all the things. I can't guarantee fixing a broken heart. You're gonna have to fix that one yourself, my darlings. Just remember, you're worth it. You're worth more than you think you are, and you're worth better than you think you are. So don't sit and wallow. Just pick yourself up, dust yourself off and go, cool, dodged a bullet there, and strut off like the independent, strong person that you are. Cool. Right, now back to the lasagna. When you put these in the freezer, make sure you put the right date. I made some earlier in the year, but I labelled too many tops. And this is what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. Yummy. Fantastic. Now, if you want to see more content like this, you better subscribe to the channel. And if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up, because I would really, really appreciate that. And I will see you again very, very soon. Love you guys heaps. Bye-bye.